Ladies and gentlemen, we are now live. This is the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford, coming to you live from Denver on a very nice Saturday afternoon, playoff Saturday, and as you see on the banner below, this is the first live stream on Odysee. I would have preferred to choose Rumble first, but I think you have to pay $10 a month, and I don't think I'm quite ready to do that just yet. But it will be up. This live stream in full will be up on Rumble later, though, for those inquiring minds out there. So this is going to be a stream where I catch up on some of the big news stories from the week. And if there's at least one thing I have to do is I have to try to commit to at least a Saturday afternoon type of stream. And that's the minimum, in addition to adding a few other clips throughout the week. And I would also like to work towards another stream on like Tuesday. And if I was really back in my zone again, like last year where I was doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday streams, then Thursday as well. But it's going to take time to get there for me, to get back in that zone when the channel started last year. And I got to work on, and once I get back into some consistent routine, you'll start to see more guests come back around again. But let's get into the first story of the day. We're going to talk about Pramila Jayapal turning on Nina Turner. So a little pun intended there. So let's go into bring an article up on the screen, and then we'll discuss the CPC opting to endorse her opponent, Chantel Brown, in re-election. So this was from a couple days ago by Julia Rock. The campaign apparatus representing Washington, D.C.'s most prominent progressive lawmakers on Wednesday spurned Nina Turner, one of the highest-profile progressive candidates in the country. The group, the Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC, has painted the decision as a pro forma one, but progressive lawmakers are now interviewing in a hotly contested House race to back a corporate-aligned Democrat over a progressive candidate who co-chaired Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign and who the party's conservative wing set out to destroy last year. So you're going to notice that the CPC really stands for nothing. And they also fight for nothing as well, because when you allow anyone to join your club, then you have no standards. Pro forma or not, the refusal to endorse Turner may be the logical endpoint of where progressive leader Pramila Jayapal has led her caucus over the past year, prioritizing inside game strategies and fealty to Democratic Party norms, even when such tactics conflict with progressive goals. So, is that where she comes to the defense of Joe Biden, defending his decision to not fight for a $15 minimum wage last year? Is it also the moment where she said that his performance so far is an A? A, really? And she also told us last year The reason why she wouldn't push Medicare for all to a House vote is because it would end the Medicare, the push for Medicare for all. So, is this action right here ending the progressive movement? Because I think so. Last year, the special election for Ohio's 11th district between Rep. Shontel Brown and Turner, a former Ohio State senator, became a proxy war between the establishment and progressive flanks of the Democratic Party. Outside groups tied to the Democratic establishment unleashed a torrent of negative messages to take down Turner, who co chaired Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign. The efforts worked. Brown won by roughly 6%. Now, with Turner once again challenging Brown in the irregular election for the seat, CPC has picked sides endorsing the incumbent, who belongs to both the CPC and the rival pro business New Democrat coalition, even though CPC chair Jayapal endorsed Turner in the special election less than a year ago. So, what you're seeing right here is pretty much Jayapal is selling the progressive movement out. And she's doing it out in the open. A lot in the way like Ro Khanna is also selling the progressive movement out in the open with the way that he's decided to cozy up with war criminals such as Bill Kristol. She's also doing it as well because now you're infiltrated and compromising those so-called goals that Jayapal said she was fighting for because she supposedly holds the ability altogether to ever have a Medicare for all vote get pushed. This isn't about whether that would ever pass or fail, but the fact that she's holding any chance of progress from ever happening hostage. Now, a Turner, oh yeah, I read that part. Let's go here. Over a year into his presidency, Biden has failed to enact most of the key agenda items he campaigned on. In almost every case, Jayapal, who has represented the Seattle area since 2017, has been party to those failures, rhetorically positioning progressives as the true defenders of Biden's agenda, the corporate flank of the caucus. But that rhetorical position, as it turns out, was a strategic alliance. When Biden folded, so did the CPC. Oh, so that right there is how much of a failure progressives have been. They've decided to anchor themselves down to the failure of Joe Biden when some of these other establishment blue dog Democrat types, they're actually trying to detach themselves a bit from Joe Biden from time to time, more compared to what any progressive or member of the squad has done in this 15 near 15 months since Joe Biden has been in office. Let's go down a couple paragraphs. After the bill passed without the minimum wage hike, this is the stimulus package that the Biden administration passed last year. Jayapal said she trusted Biden would get it done. I will just say one hopeful thing. The president called me today to thank me for the work on the COVID bill, and we talked about a $15 minimum wage and he again recommitted to me how he's going to get this done and getting it done quickly and getting a $15 minimum wage pass, she said on the Dean O. OB Dallas show. Oh man, what have we learned about when the details from the inside get leaked out? They just make the progressives look weak and naive every time that they, oh, we were listened, we were heard, because now you're starting to see the messaging change up a bit now that they're getting into this midterm election season. So that means that now you're getting into a spot where after a year of abandoning terms like Medicare for all, universal health care terms, and when they watered down that language to access, now you're in a situation where, behold, they're flipping the switch. That's what's happening. And people like us aren't falling for it. Unlike 2016, 2020, when there were a lot of people on the left who are hopeful that they could potentially follow through. And I think the hope really waned in a big way. Then we got to go back to that Build Back Better legislation, the thing that is dead on arrival in the Senate. A similar series of events played out over Biden's Build Back Better legislation, an ambitious social spending program that would have made community college free, expanded child tax credit permanently, invested in clean energy, enforced utilities, cut down emissions, invested in childcare, and allow Medicare to negotiate some prescription drug prices. That seems like a pretty uh, ambitious way to describe a bill that got continuously watered down, which used to be like a $6 billion spending plan, which I believe by the time it finally went through the House, it was about 1.5 trillion. Then you saw Nancy Pelosi try to split the social spending bill and the infrastructure agenda into two separate pieces to try to gain Republican votes, including that budget. And that part of it was supposed to go on the budget reconciliation period. But that was just as bad of a failure. And that was another moment where the squad had that designed vote where most of them actually voted closer, more closely resembled to a block. But uh, the other part of the Democrats turned. Is there anywhere else to go with this article? I think that's pretty much it. Let's just shift gears over to Nina Turner and what this means. So you remember last year, just after the progressives and the squad opted to just give their vote away to Nancy Pelosi for the House Speaker without trying to get any type of concession in return. And some of them, like AOC, they tried to gaslight you into telling you to trust their plan and that you're going to see the concession, that behind the scenes type work. It'll show in time. And right now, they haven't got shit to show for it. Next, then we, then Nina, she was on Humanist Report with Mike Figueredo, who was nodding his head along to Nina Turner, defending the decision of them to not try to get any type of extraction for a House vote. Not only that, she prepared her voters to be disappointed in her because she would just be like them as well. And with that in mind, now you've got some of these progressives who are still going to have try to run within the Democratic Party. They now have to try to differentiate themselves from that messaging because they know that it's going to be suicide for that extra bit of energy that you need to win an election if they try to say that same message. And we've seen how all those progressives they've sold themselves out to power. And it doesn't take accepting money to get sold out. You get compromised. You get changed. Of course, this is a feature of this system. And this is why there's just not much we can accomplish within a two-party system, and that everything will just have to be accomplished. A lot of what we have to do is going to get accomplished from the outside, even though, and this is going back to the point of how if you thought Nina Turner was pretty close last year, losing by 6 points with sapped energy from the left, and this year, even more sapped energy on the left because now you got progressives turning on each other. Remember the original mission of the Justice Democrats? It was to run as opposition to the Democratic establishment. That's who they were really supposed to challenge. They weren't just there to appease the establishment with mainly Republican focused attacks and defending Joe Biden greater than any other factions of the Democratic Party. No. And now Nina Turner is now going to lose this reelection attempt by even greater amount than she did last time. And it's not going to be the frustrated lefties to blame. It's going to be the progressives within the Democratic Party because once again they're spineless and they are unserious about trying to build their own coalition. That's why they're going to lose. And they have no solidarity with each other. They have no coalition. They don't link arms when it comes to voting on anything important. They always allow their votes to be split up by design. That way the party gets what it wants. And this is why you can't trust anyone within the Democratic Party, especially if your goal was to reform the Democratic Party, because that's a full out failure. That's not going to happen. And this right here is further proof that if you're one of these big lefty commentators whose own main messaging is based in electoralism, you're just misleading people in the wrong direction when we could actually be organizing direct action movements, and those people are just holding a ton of those people back, and that's really the thick of it at the end. And why I've said that even when you think you've sent progressives in the Congress, they're going to turn into just any other Democrat in given time. And it becomes much more obvious when you've got a democratically controlled House and Senate and the president. So even though those are both pretty slim majorities, they've shown the capability of making sure they can always figure out how to not have the votes to get anything done. So next, we got to get into, we're going to shift gears and talk about Chris Smalls and Amazon again, because he's taken his message wherever he can take it. And that even includes Fox News. This past Thursday night, he was on with Tucker Carlson. And it's important to show you how liberals, specifically white liberals, are trying to smear a black organizer like Chris Smalls, who's actually shown the ability to get shit done. So this is from Andrew Lawrence, part of the Media Matters group. And the thing that you see with him is a lot of these liberals who have a bit of the lefty aesthetic of policy, even they just mainly build their Twitter brand on posting Tucker Carlson clips, and usually they'll people like him will do it with the left. Well, what I mean is they'll do it by posting full clips of some abhorrent soundbite of talking to someone from the right, or some really bad monologue from him. But when it comes time to when Tucker has someone from the left on his show, like a Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mate, Max Blumenthal, even no Mickey Konst, who usually doesn't get this type of energy, but they'll just use the headline to try to mislead you into thinking that they performed badly in this interview. And that right there is not the case at all. So I'm about to show you that full clip of the misleading bullshit that Andrew Lawrence just tried to pull on Twitter. In fact, it was in the quotes of his tweet. So let's just start off with the tweet first from Barbarism Critic. This is why I hate hot take Twitter. Chris Smalls did us proud and didn't let Tucker get on his bullshit. This is how you meet workers where they are, and this is how it's done. And I'm about to show you.
The worker, she's like a modern wobbly. She's the Walter Reuther of our day. And that's why last year she vowed to stand alongside striking workers at Amazon's Staten Island warehouse. And we're for that because they need the help. But at the last minute, Cindy Cortez bailed on the whole thing. And that infuriated labor organizers who just won a big vote to unionize at the Staten Island facility. Now, Amazon is stepping up its effort to crush the union. Amazon has just banned words like union on its employee chat app. Christian Smalls is a union leader at Amazon, and we're happy to have him join us now. Christian, thanks so much for coming on. So were you surprised that Cindy Cortez Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has said repeatedly that she's on the side of the worker against the corporation, wasn't standing with you at the barricades.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just her. It was all of them pretty much. It's
Yeah,
not
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want it to make it just between us and AOC because a lot of them didn't show up. And once again, we have no ill will against them. We know that whether they showed up or not, they didn't make or break our election. We just had to continue to organize.
You see the disappointment on Tucker's face. He wanted that similar juicy soundbite that Chris Smalls gave on more the liberal and independent left outlets because he has gone in on AOC pretty hard in those moments. But Tucker wanted that for his show. And Chris knew not to take the bait. And that right there was the primary moment of how misleading that screenshot was from Andrew Lawrence. And that's because Chris knows that in order to get a union going, it can't just consist of leftists and liberals. You're, of course, going to need some moderates and conservatives because worker unions are bipartisan or ideologically diverse. They aren't just for for a certain portion of people. And that's what real union people understand. Anyone who gets into a union understands that they aren't going to agree on political politics, but they have shared worker goals. And this is why it's important to get your message out on Tucker Carlson, which I believe is the second highest rated cable news show, only behind Sean Hannity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird moment because I mean, I'm on the right. I've never been particularly pro-union, but it does seem like Amazon needs some counterbalance. Like it's this huge company, the workers have no power, and maybe we could, I don't know, share a little power with people who work there. So that's my view anyway. So tell us where you are in your organizing efforts.
Well, right now, we're fighting for a contract. Amazon's disputing the election results. So we're in walking and chewing bubble gum at the same time. We're fighting for a contract. We're preparing for another election in 2 weeks on April 25th. We're going to be voting at a second location directly across the building that we just unionized. So we're in the thick of a fight right now, a legal battle. And, we just have to stay grounded and pretty much begin our campaign all over again.
I mean, you'd think that Amazon would be open to a union, wouldn't you?
So you just see the disappointment in Tucker right there? It's because he wanted to lead him off the road, so to speak, and get him into a mudslinging. And Chris Smalls is staying focused on what's important at that moment is the advocacy of unionization for Amazon. So about to finish the interview now. Right there.
That Amazon would be open to a union, wouldn't you? It's a very progressive company. Why do you think they're trying to thwart you from organizing?
Amazon hasn't been unionized in this country since the beginning of its existence, and they're very anti-union. They created a system that hires and fires people. They create a system that they have full control of the working people. And having a union obviously brings representation for the workers that'll benefit the workers at the bottom, like myself, hourly associates, entry-level workers that don't get the right to negotiate. So forming a union gives us the right to collective bargain with the company, form a contract to protect ourselves. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Amazon Labor Union. We're hoping that we'll be a catalyst for something that'll take place nationwide.
Well, I certainly am rooting for you. I mean, maybe if they throw some more woke slogans at you, you'll forget you can't feed your family.
Right.
Chris, I appreciate your coming on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So you see right there, even in that instance, he wanted Chris to really show anti-wokeness. And the thing is, he just shrugged that off. Because even though, yes, there is some bad aspects to wokeism, but it mainly comes down to how you apply it politically. And if you just apply it as a way like the liberals do, which is just pointing at both sides and making excuses not to get anything done, that's what I consider bad. But if you you acknowledge it as a way to try to get people to work together along class lines, so to speak, and frame it in a way that you can win over people that aren't in your echo chamber, then that's a more positive way to go about it. But let's go back to that Andrew Lawrence thread now that we've went through that video, which was a superb performance on Tucker Carlson. You could tell he cut that down because Chris wasn't taking the bait and staying focused on message. A lot of people are missing my point, so I'll be a little more clear. Tucker Carlson is a hateful bigot, and he uses his program every night to spread his hateful bigotry. Someone like Smalls appearing on his show only gives Tucker credibility he doesn't deserve. Not sure what type of flex Andrew Lawrence is going for here, but you do have a bit of a higher ground when you have actual leftists on your show and the other top liberal networks almost always never have people from the left on their platforms. And that doesn't make them any better than Tucker either. Because he's doing a lot of what Fox News wants him to do, playing his role in pushing the culture war, then also uh, being able to do a bit of both sides speak with this fake populism shtick he does. Because if there's anything anyone should be able to take away from Tucker Carlson is that a lot of his political views are pretty disingenuous. I think the one thing that his anti-China rhetoric is one example of where I do think that is a genuinely bad view of his. Then, for example, earlier in the same show, Tucker ran a whole segment defending a Twitter account for directing harassment towards the LGBT community. I think it's a mistake to appear on that same show minutes later. And that's just a example of pretty much the design of his show, really. The goal is to try to, if you're good at this, you're not just gonna, I think if you're opportunist as a media personality, you're not just gonna, you're gonna talk out of both sides, so to speak, to try to please your guest. I mean, Joe Rogan is very good at this, both sides type of speak. We know that he's generally more right, even though he does have a few lefties guest on his show. But the point is, a platform is still a platform to be exploited to your advantage. Furthermore, spare me the whole get the message out bullshit. On his best nights, Tucker has 1% of the population turning. I'd imagine it's the least likely swayed 1% of the population in America. There are more effective, less harmful ways to get the message out. Oh, that was the worst part of that thread. And it's a shame because he gives Andrew Lawrence a bad name, specifically the youngest of the Lawrence brothers. Shame. First thing I'd like to point out here is so if you consider CNN and MSNBC to be such a better platform to get the message out, divide that 1% by like six. It's like 0.16% of the country. And that chopped down group that could see your message is almost never going to give you the opportunity in normal circumstances to spread that message. And in this Chris Small's unionization is an exception because he, I believe he did get an appearance on CNN Plus before they decided that it was a massive failure and a burning of money in a dumpster. But I believe he also made the appearance with Mehdi Hassan on MSNBC. So that is one moment where he has managed to make the exception here and get on. But this is a very moot point because this is the main point I wanted to say about how white liberals are getting mad when a black organizer is getting shit done and they don't follow and they don't go by their rules. So tell me how you're going to advance anything in this country if you can't reach out and get people who disagree with you on board with what you're trying to push. And this reeks of the I support your method of I support your message, but not the methods of which you're willing to go to achieve them. You know, when that commonly comes up, protest. They pulled it on Colin Kaepernick when they agreed with the cause, but not the method of which he was going to achieve it with when he took the knee during the national anthem starting back in 2016. Then you saw this same line of thinking from certain liberals in the media once they decided to turn on the George Floyd protest nearly 2 years ago. Once they got more fixated on the 3% of looters and rioters and ignored all the police violence, that's when liberals turned on Black Lives Matter. And even though the turn didn't happen immediately, it really started to set the ball further in motion once you started to see Joe Biden win. And this is why white liberals like Andrew Lawrence are going to be useless in a real revolution because they're always going to be the ones who are going to be telling masses of people who could be joining us and tell them that this action is wrong and you shouldn't be there. But the truth is, they're blatantly misrepresenting what's getting done, smearing black activists like Smalls, who are actually going about it the right way. So it's important to point out this hypocrisy of the whole platform legitimacy, delegitimization type of cowardice that you get from liberals. Because we are not at a time where we can afford to turn down opportunities which could advance the left movements. So next, we're out to talk about Elon Musk a bit and how he has liberals shaking in their boots over the idea of him taking over Twitter. So let's take a look at the details of Elon Musk willing to buy Twitter for $41 billion. And when that came out Thursday morning, the liberal blue check personalities were shaking in their boots all over the Twitters. And I got to bring up the biggest example of that, which took place on a morning joke clip, which I'm working on pulling up. But I did not have that one ready beforehand. Okay, now I've got it. Let's get that one up, and we'll put some relevant points to go over.
Who were Trump voters and are still Trump supporters. They go, yeah, you guys are going crazy. He's doing, what are you so surprised about? He's doing exactly what he said he's going to do.
Well, and I think that the dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
Yeah, if you look at the issues, Yamiche is right. He's doing exactly what he said. It's
right.
It's who were Trump voters and are still.
That shit is scary. This is liberal media admitting to you out loud that they are supposed to be the ones in charge of mind control here, not Elon Musk, even though it's ultimately a game of meaningless charades. But it's also very disturbing that you've got people in the liberal media who out loud admit that it's their job to do mind control. And as someone who went to college for journalism, you hear it in a lesser way, like the you, a lot of journalism in my mind, what you learn, is just been done to justify propping up the existence of corporate media. It's not just liberal media, even though most of your journalist instructors are going to be liberal. But point is, you do hear those uh, underlying tones about how it's supposed to be the media's job to control minds. No. And they talked about how another one of those underlying themes about was talking about how problematic that opinion in journalism is mixed. And problem is, the real problem is how they try to shut down discourse. That's the real problem with journalism these days. And the important part is, while another theme of that, of where going to college for journalism is the fact that they try to get you to take the opinion out of your reporting. I think it's important to acknowledge where your bias lies, then try to make sure the facts are still intact, even when you put your bias out there. That's where a healthier uh, journalism space would be at. Discourse would be able to exist from all angles, and that's a major problem with liberals who are now intertwined with big tech to make sure that they can protect us from fascism. When the reality is, they're just practicing their brand of fascism by trying to use censor Trump, Donald Trump, and other like-minded right wingers because they think that's the best way to uh, avoid going a bit further right than what we're at now. And the reality is, most of the time, you're going to have to beat free speech with better speech, bad speech with better speech, then step in and intervene when there's actual violence taking place. And it really scares the people like that on your MSNBC, your CNN, and those random liberal blue checks because they think that Elon Musk is suddenly going to allow them to be challenged by right wingers. When if you actually pay attention to something outside of that bubble, you're going to notice that it's actually the left who's getting clamped down in a worse way than what like those cancel culture warriors on the right think. So to try pointing a point that I have home, I'm going to put up a tweet from Fiorella Isabel of the Combo Couch. As always, from the couch. Elon Musk, a billionaire businessman who hangs with the fascists who run this world, will not save free speech, you, or this planet. Cope with that realization, then come back to reality and work to actually save those things. That right there is the main overlying point that is needed to be made about this whole idea of the fear that liberals have with Elon Musk and the Elon Musk fanboys who actually think he's one of the good billionaires who's actually going to change some things for the better. There are no true good billionaires. And the only way a billionaire could ever have a chance to redeem themselves is if they were a former billionaire. Because unfortunately for those Musk fanboys who are actually worse than guys who are pussy whipped because they're bootstrap whipped and hoping, and that's even worse cult of fandom and obsession that people have held over billionaires. And it's among one of the many disturbing cults that exist that are actually counterproductive to improving people's lives. And what we know does not improve lives at all for a fact is when your government steps in and their controlled media outlets and platforms and enact more censorship. So, how to go into this whole recent wave of censorship on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. So, I'm going to pull up an article from Caitlin Johnstone yesterday in Tweet Thread 4, talk, which will show some of the recent examples of people who have been censored. More escalations in online censorship. YouTube has been deleting videos disputing the U.S. government narrative about the Russia war crimes in Bucha, which is pretty much just the media's telling you everything bad going on. There's Russia started it, Ukraine didn't. And it's like that biased parent that only sees one of their kids causing all the trouble, ignoring the kid who could be causing real, actual trouble. YouTube has been deleting videos disputing the U.S. government narrative about Russia war crimes in Bucha, Ukraine, validating concerns that Silicon Valley platforms would begin censoring anyone who challenges the authorized version of events of this war. And a couple of people who are doing this are Gonzalo Lira. By the way, my video, Bucha More Lies, has been deleted by YouTube censors. The official narrative is now Bucha was a Russia atrocity, no dissent allowed. It makes you wonder how many other historical truths are actually lies that are carefully curated and protected. Really scary stuff right there. Then Nick Cruz of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. My stream last night on RBN was censored on YouTube after debunking the Bucha massacre narrative. Now YouTube sent a message to all content creators saying YouTube channels will be demonetized for debunking Western narratives on Ukraine. Unreal censorship going on right now. And later, yeah, Nick had two streams censored because he had another one talking about like Finland and NATO, and YouTube uh, took that one down as well. And now Revolutionary Blackout Network has responded by uh, getting ready to have Odysee and Rumble page. And just to think, what felt like a couple weeks ago, they pretty much uh, dismantled the existence of RT America by deplatforming them in the United States and the NATO countries. It would seem that this clears up what YouTube meant by what it said last month. It would also certainly by clarified by well documented and meant unproven assertions by the US government. See this? This is an example of the mind control that they want kept in place. But any rich oligarchs, billionaire types aren't really going to try to undo this control. So that means the only answer is to build platforms which can't be infiltrated by silicon big tech censorship and make sure that the right people are running those platforms. That way they aren't they don't turn into places where people get reported for having views that are outside of the groupthink of the platform. Because the right way of handling it is to just hand out a big ass ratio. It's probably worth noting at this point that YouTube is owned by Google, which is a US military contractor, and which has been inseparably intertwined with US intelligence agencies from its very inception. COVID, QAnon, election security, the excuses change from day to day, but the constant is we're always told the solution is more internet censorship. Now they're just openly censoring those who disagree with the world's most powerful government in war. Twitch has jumped aboard this latest censorship escalation, banning multiple accounts for voicing wrong think about Ukraine in response to an inquiry by Financial Times as to why it's permitting pro-Kremlin falsehoods on the platform. So this is from Infrared Hawes's tweet showing that he has taken a ban along with Jackson Hinkle because of their anti-imperialist coverage and their refusal to accept what the corporate media here wants, and how both those guys are regularly working to debunk that propaganda. So don't start with the whole Russia puppet Putin apologist bullshit, because the United States is the most propagandized country in the world. And we do not have the high ground to be telling other countries that they're more propagandized than us. And this wave of censorship is just another example of that. The Financial Times inquiry followed a report tattling on those accounts by the Soros and Omi Dayar funded tech transparency. Twitter, another massive platform which ties the U.S. government, has also seized the moment as an opportunity to ratchet up the censorship of empire critics. Former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter has been banned from the platform for simply tweeting criticisms of the establishment Bucha narrative. And I believe Scott Ritter has been banned twice now, and he's been forced to take his personal work to other platforms like Telegram, and since he is getting not allowed to challenge those the U.S. pro-Ukraine narrative that gets pushed here. Journalist Pepe Escobar, who has been openly sympathetic to the Russian side of the conflict, was banned for using some rather colorful language about the fate of the neo-Nazi Azov battalion. And this is why you cannot take the liberal media seriously, because they fearmonger over Nazis here that are in uh, organized and unorganized groups. Then the white supremacists that we have in suits, whether it be the police, Congress, president, they got nothing to say for them. And whenever you try to bring up the fact that the US is pretty much sending weapons to Nazis to fight Russians, what do these liberals got? Oh, it's just a very small amount of Nazis. Sure, that could easily be an argument that you can make about the KKK, the Proud Boys as well. But the difference is, the liberal hypocrisy is, they actually at least say that they're anti-Nazis in that situation, but they're pro-Nazi by supporting those Nazis at the battalion because they have a disproportionate amount of power in Ukraine, and they pretty much have a lot of control over Vladimir Zelensky, and it's why they're not doing anything to resolve the conflict and try to come up to a diplomatic solution, which is what anyone anti-war, anti-imperialist would really want. And that's why, even though I haven't spoke on it yet, my focus has been making sure that the US government is not getting involved in this shit. And if that means, in addition to that, being very anti-NATO as well, because they're also very problematic in making things worse and letting these two countries resolve this issue. And let's shift back to this Escobar point here is when you just weigh the arguments for both sides and think about the validity of them, Russia's argument is actually far more compelling than the Ukraine side of things, which has just barely mainly been propped up in anti-Putin propaganda. I mean, one of the basic points of Russia finally deciding to defend itself is denazification of the region. And and uh, and standing up against Nazis is a good thing, even if it does happen to come with from another capitalist oligarch ruled ruler like a Putin. That's at least a step up from a United States country and Ukraine, two countries who refuse to disavow Nazis. This is happening against the backdrop of Elon Musk's shenanigans about potentially buying Twitter in full, which has sent mainstream liberals into a tizzy over fears on the platform would become less restricted. And this is why I felt like these two stories together connected well. Censorship, liberals shaking in their boots over someone who may not censor as much, especially in this point in time where the propaganda is off the charts. I have a hard time imagining that the richest man in the world would actually do anything to protect free speech, but the horror with which imperial narrative managers are reacting to the faintest hint of that possibility is very revealing. This right here is from Maximum Bootlicker. I am frightened by the impact on society and politics if Elon Musk acquires Twitter. He seems to believe that on social media, anything goes. For democracy to survive, we need more content moderation, not less. And that's a picky ass bootlicker, if you ask me, because if you're bootlicking already, then you don't have the stance to be able to be picky about which boots you get to lick. That means you're looking liberal and conservative boots alike if you're a bootlicker. However, if you're someone with integrity and a spine and refuses to not fall in line with any of these uh, oligarchs, billionaires, the corporate media atmosphere, then you're actually standing up to them and refusing to lick those boots. And when you already have partially do it, then you don't have the standing or the or from your laying down, so to speak, to be able to refuse it. I might not necessarily agree with everything that's been said with anyone who's had their voices silenced in this latest ramp up of online censorship. But I do strongly believe that only the worst and only or most deluded among us support their silence. And unfortunately, that's true because I think it's a bit of a misnomer to assume anyone could be a free speech absolutist. But I do think that the better people are pretty damn close to it, and that the moment where you do need to step in is when violence and real threats happen. But now, free speech in the United States is controlled by big tech, who is interlinked with government. That's why we are losing our free speech. It's not because we let the wrong people take control, speak on it. It's because the wrong people are in control of it. And it's why the synthetic left hypocrisy on this is baffling to me. They're the same ones like the serfs who are going to want you to cry when they get censored, but then they flex and laugh when Jackson Hinkle and Infrared Hawes get censored. They suddenly turn into the the company bootlicker when it comes to cheering on people that get censored that they disagree with. And unfortunately, there's hardly any true principled people on the issue of free speech who are willing to call it out and acknowledge it from all the whole spectrum of the political spectrum. There's a small, tiny amount of people on the right who are actually uh, more principled on this, but most of them are just concerned about making sure they don't get canceled. Liberals are just concerned about losing their control on the media if it doesn't stay in place. Under no possible framing is suppressing criticism of mightiest posture of all time a reasonable or acceptable thing to do. And this is what we're up against right now. And that's the biggest places where we could spread our messages are the ones that are going to be quick to take us down once we make it. And we're now getting forced into being pushed to other platforms like Rockfin, Rumble, Odysee, Telegram, and hopefully soon we'll see Panquake emerge because we need those places. We need a new platform built to challenge them, to be more free again. And this is why the whole strawman Rumble's a right wing platform. It's only right wing if you allow it to be. If more people from the left take add Rumble to their reach, then guess what? More people on the left are going to join, and you're going to see that site get balanced out. And it's something that a lot of people have recently had to make the choice of doing. Revolutionary Blackout Network is about to be on Rumble. Sabby Sabs has just joined Rumble. James Fauntleroy with his JB Thought channel. He's about to join Rumble. The platforms are there for our advantage. So moments like these, this is how we must respond by taking advantage of them. Not saying that it's not for us. Because when we do that, that's defeatist strategy attitude, which will get us nowhere. So that will do it for today's live stream of the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford. And goal is to, if I don't do anything else before then, I'll be back on sometime next Saturday afternoon with another live stream of stories of some news to cover from the week once again. In addition to that, please go to my link tree, like, share, subscribe to content. Be subscribed and followed on multiple platforms. If you're on YouTube, go join on Rumble and Odysee. Follow me on Twitch because help those numbers grow. In addition to that, the more people that we have in independent media, the more of us that they can't stop. They can't stop all of us. So if you're out there and you think you're ready to finally put some content out on platforms, like I'm trying to as a small uh, creator at the time, then do it. Have a good rest of your weekend. This is Andrew Rochford saying goodbye and good night.